Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Let me know if you can hear me. I'm going to shut this door. Let me know if you can hear me, and we'll go ahead and get started. Just want to make sure. So hopefully y'all can hear me, and I just want to mention. All right, thanks, Wayne and Paul. Just wanted to mention, a lot of you posting questions before we're even the office hours are starting. Just want to let you know I'm only going to be answering questions that are posted when the office hours start. So I want to make sure that I'm answering for questions for people who are here with us. So make sure to post your questions. There's no sense in posting it beforehand or after the office hours are over because those questions aren't going to get answered. So I'm going to go to right before we got started here, and I'm going to start with Paul W. So if you're someone that was posted before we got started, so it looks like Murray Carmen, if you're still here, go ahead and post your question, and I'll get to it as we're working through these. So and like I said, this is live. I am live from my home, so I do have a dog and things get delivered here sometimes, and people are here and things happen. So bear with me. If I have to leave for a second, that would be why. All right. So Paul W, I'll go start with you. Mentions says good day to you as well. It's a great day. Master started today, so not sure if you can see. I got it up on my TV here, so hopefully I'm not distracted by that. But Paul W asks, can you recommend any drills to stop early extension? Divots are too heavy and open up club face. So usually, so your symptoms are a little bit. I would not sure if you have early extension or not, or it could be early extension that you're just hitting behind the ball. Because usually what happens when you have early extension is you usually have trouble taking divots because the club comes in, you flip it, and you basically have to pick the ball off the turf. But really early can also cause fat shots, which is likely what's happening. So the number one thing I see that causes early extension, like I said, it's hard for me to know 100%, Paul, what is the issue with you specifically. But I can tell you the number one thing I see, and the number one thing I see is, if I grab a club here, number one thing I see is the steepness in the downswing. So if we're looking at the downswing here, I see that the club is coming down in the downswing here like this, most likely. Now, you may be shallowing it out, and maybe you're just kind of standing up to try to add speed, which in that case, I would be working on just trying to stay in your posture more. But what I see most of the time, it's a result of coming down steep. Because when you're steep, you have a couple options here. So one is to just continue on this path that's going straight down into the ball. And you're going to that might be what's going on because you mentioned that you're taking deep divots. So what you'll want to do is shallow out the club so that you can rotate into the ball and get that club releasing out in front. The other option is to swing way over the top. So you're here, and then you just swing way over the top like that. But what most people do, and it's where the early extension comes from, is they come down like this. And in order to get this club to come back down on plane, what happens is they stand up out of it. So they're going to stand up, and then that club now drops down onto plane. So that would be the move. You'll want to go to the move and work through that. We also have, if you're seeing that you're shallowing out the club and you're just having trouble staying in your posture, you'll want to go to our stop early extension section. If you go to the instruction tab on the website, or if you just go to the homepage and scroll down, you're going to see all the courses there. And there's a course that's called Stop Early Extension. You want to check that out if you are shallowing out the club nicely. Now, if you're coming down steep, and what I mean by that is the butt end of the club here is pointing down toward the ground or inside the golf ball when you're looking from down the line. If you're seeing that, then you're coming down steep. You're going to want to work on the move first for sure. Again, that's on the instruction tab, or if you go to the home page and scroll down, you'll see all the courses. The move is one of those. All right. So let's move on to Dennis M here. Dennis M says the lag section suggests 65% at max lag. So I assume you mean degrees. I have a hard time getting this lag when I try to do the bow to wrist on the downswing. Can you show this how it's done? Provide drills to practice this. So essentially, everyone's going to be a little bit different how you're made up. Some people are going to have varying amounts of lag. So when we went and we looked at all the major winners of the last 20 years, we went and measured all of the pieces on the Top Speed Golf system on those folks. And we found that the average max lag position, and when we're talking about max lag position, that's when you're coming down in the downswing. When this lead arm is parallel to the ground, that's about when you see that max lag position. What that means is where the angle between your arm and the shaft, that's when you're seeing the sharpest angle there. So that would be like a 90-degree angle. That would be more like a 65-degree angle like you're seeing. So we found that the average was about 55 degrees, but there was guys at 70, 80 degrees, and there was guys at 30 degrees. So it's all about the makeup of yourself. And it's also some other things that give the appearance of lag. So number one is pretty much everyone can only bend the club back so far. So if I were to I'm holding it straight up and down right here. This is vertical. And if you're looking at my wrist angle, the maximum amount of wrist angle, you're looking at, that's probably about 20 degrees. I can bend back. That's about everybody. Nope. Unless you have crazy flexible wrists or you're like double jointed or something, you're probably not going to be able to bend it back much more than that. Now, what gives that appearance of a sharp angle of lag is if I shallow out the club. So if I have this bent back and I shallow out the club, so now look at that angle. See, now look, I have a lot sharper angle here. That looks more like a 45-degree angle. So here's everything that gives you the appearance of lag. So number one is having the thumbs up as much as you can. That's going to be about 20 degrees of it for most people. Number two is the shallowing of it. So that adds like another, 20, 15, 20 degrees, depending on how much you're shallowing it. And then the other is just the momentum of the club head. So if you watch, I'm gonna have some momentum of the club head going this way, and you're gonna see how sharp of angle I can get. So that's just the momentum of the club head that's tightening that up. So those are the three things that are creating that. So if you're not seeing as sharp an angle of lag, well, I would first think, are you thumbs up enough? As you're coming down to this position, are you thumbs up enough? And if you're not, then you'll want to work the stick behind the ball drill. That's a great one from the lag section. And that's just one where you're trying to keep the butt into the club pointing behind the golf ball as long as you can, and then you release it. And then there's also a thumbs up and thumbs down drill that's good in the Top Speed lag section. Now, if you're struggling with if you're looking from this angle, you're coming down steep and you're not getting that. So here I'm getting I got my thumbs up as much as I can, but I'm steep. I have this shaft straight up and down. That's going to be the move. You want to go to the move section on the website and look through that. And then if you're just having trouble with getting some momentum, so I'd make sure that you're not early wrist setting. So if you're setting that wrist early, so now there's not going to be as much momentum going down the downswing. That's also going to help your turn. So any drills, there's in the power turn section, there are some drills for getting a nice wide takeaway. So to find some great drills on a wide takeaway, I would search the website. And on the website, there's a great search tool on there. It works really, really well, surprisingly well, actually. It's in the upper right-hand corner of about any page on the website. Search wide takeaway. So if you're shallowing and your thumbs up as much as you can, you're still not getting that angle of lag, what's most likely happening is either it could be if you just do this right here and hold it straight up and down, see how much you can bend it back toward you. If you can only get about a 90-degree angle, it's going to be hard for you to get, a really, really sharp angle of lag just because your wrists don't bend that way. And that's completely fine. You can only do what you're capable of doing. We're not asking you to break your wrist to try and generate that lag. That's fairly rare. But we do see it. It does happen sometimes. But yeah, use that search engine, search a wide takeaway to help you generate a little bit more momentum to be able to generate that lag. All right, so hopefully that helps. Dennis, great question. All right. I think that was a great question. I think that would be a good highlight. So I might write that down. 10-minute in on lag. I'm going to write that down so that we're going to have some highlights that hopefully we can show people to get more people to come in and get their questions answered. Because we probably don't have a video on the website that covers everything that I just went over right there. So that was a great question. Wayne V says, please go over swing sequence slowly if possible, and what triggers direction change. So in the backswing, you're actually going to be switching directions. So I think about it like walking. So if you're walking, you're taking a step forward, right? Your momentum is moving forward, but you don't have any pressure in that lead foot yet. You're still building up. You're loading up on your trail foot. So I think about it like walking. You're pushing, you're loading up, and then you're going to your lead side. Same thing's happening in the golf swing. As you're getting about to here, you're starting to move this way, but you're still building up and turning as you're going to the downswing. A lot of people, they're loading up, and to start the downswing, it's this. They don't have any momentum going to their lead side yet. So what I'd recommend doing, the best video you can watch to help you understand this is it's a video. I think it's just called How to Start the Downswing. So again, go to the search engine on the website. You want to watch Clay, and it's going to give you a great drill. It's called the step drill. That's going to help you get the feeling, because you're going to be starting the backswing and stepping forward at the same time. So you're going to get that. It's like walking, like I was saying, you're building up, but your momentum is going forward. That's the feeling that you want to have to start the downswing. So it starts from the ground up. You're going to your lead side, you're using the ground, and your hips are going to go, then your torso goes, then your shoulders and your arms in the club. And then, it goes in that sequence. Now they're milliseconds apart the way that they're going, but that's the sequence that you want. If you get the arms and the club going before everything else, you're typically going to flip, you're going to cast, you're not going to be able to hit the ball with as much compression. So go to that downswing video, how to start the downswing, use the search engine on the website. And there's a great video I'd like you to watch. It's going to be about the third one down, I think, because there's the how to start the downswing, I think, for distance. And then there's another one that's just how to start the downswing. And it's got yellow print in the thumbnail. Check out that one. That one will be a good one to look at with a great drill for in there. All right, so Dave S., let me get a drink here. Dave S. says, I've been working on the straight line release and noticed a huge thing in this past week. That is, use a light grip and swing with the arms. Then the big thing, use the left shoulder to swing the club through to the release point. This appears to be working magically for me. However, when searching for videos on the site, I don't seem to find much information about the left shoulder. And then it cut off, it looked like at that point. So a lot of what golf is adjusting your feeling to get the desired result that you want. So my feeling of what's happening and your feeling of what's happening when we're doing the same thing might be completely different. So that's what it comes down to. It comes down to adjusting your feeling to get the desired result that you want. So that, if you're feeling, it's like, releasing the club early. If you think about most amateurs, right, they're feeling, a lot of you probably feel like you're trying to hold off as much as you can to not flip the club. Whereas a professional who is releasing the club nicely, I guarantee you, they are thinking they're trying to release that as quickly as possible. But if an amateur felt that, like they were trying to release that club as quickly and as soon as possible, they'd most likely flip. And that's just because of your natural tendency, your natural feeling. You have to feel a certain thing to make a certain thing happen. So as soon as you find something that it gives you the desired result that you want, stick with it. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. I mean, if you're getting results for it, it means that you're likely right. But it's hard for me to know exactly what's happening in your swing that's giving you a big difference. But most likely it's making you do certain things that are better. Not necessarily because of you're actually doing something with your shoulder, but maybe it's helping you sequence something else a little bit better or something like that. So, but again, if you're searching the website, shoulder, there is a crazy detail video on shoulders on the website if you want to learn a little bit about shoulder movement and how that works. I'll check that out. If you go to the instruction tab and go to the vault, there is a crazy detail section in there. I take a look at that. Those are videos where Clay goes into a lot of kind of excruciating detail on things like the shoulders, what the left arm is doing, what your knee is doing, and things like that. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, you can check that out. Now, we don't necessarily recommend that you go out and try to get the perfect shoulder movement and things like that, because it's really not as important in the long run. What you're looking for is, what you really want to focus on is the 5 pieces of the Top Speed Golf system. Those are the most important things. And those are universal truths that will help everyone. And like I said, your left shoulder feeling or movement can be different than somebody else's. But the best ball strikers in the world, they all do the 5 pieces of the Top Speed Golf system. All right. So these are all the confirmations. All right. So Mary Carmen C here says, my husband has a meniscus tear on the right knee. Oh, sorry to hear that. What does he have to watch out for when playing golf, not to make it worse? I'm sorry, I'm not really qualified to answer that question. That's going to be a question that you're going to need to talk to a doctor about. I'm not really sorry. I wish I could help, but I'm not really qualified to answer that. Paul W says, Joel's a stop really extension. Thanks. Divots or two. Oh, okay. So he reposted it. I think that was the first question I answered. So hopefully you saw that. Dennis M, again, he reposted. I answered that one. Ed D says, at address, I waggle the club a few times, but I'm frozen over the ball. It takes me a long time before I make my backswing. Do you have any advice or tips to overcome being frozen over the ball at address? Yeah, so it's about basically developing a swing routine. Well, one, if you're frozen over the ball, it's most likely you're just overthinking things. You have too many swing thoughts at address. So what I like to do is basically, what I'm talking about, my pre-shot routine is I basically get behind the golf ball and I play a little movie in my head of the shot, what I'm trying to achieve. And then, I usually stand about the same distance behind it. And it's usually, 3 or 4 steps. I step into it. I line up the face to where I want the ball to start and everything. Then I line up my feet with that. And then usually for me, it's a look at the target one more time, and then it's down at the ball, and I start. As soon as I look down at the ball, I start to swing. So I would have kind of develop a routine like that. It's something you're going to have to practice. So what's probably happened with you is you do your little your waggle thing, and then you get situated, and then you just can't. You have to have something that triggers the golf swing. So maybe it's you do your waggle, and then as soon as you put that club down, if you look at who's something that Duffner, Jason Duffner, he waggles the club like crazy. I mean, you can watch him. He does like 20 waggles before he hits the ball. But he does that last waggle. He puts the club on the ground, and then he starts to swing. There's no, there's no hesitation there. So you got to have something that triggers your swing. For me, it's a look at the target and then back down at the ball, and then I go. That's what I found works best for me. For some people, it's a forward press of the hands that starts the swing. For some people, it's a little squat down, or a little like the right knee comes in. Everyone there's no wrong trigger. It's just find what works best for you. I like looking at the target, then looking back down the ball, starting the swing. But that's what works for me. That's what I've done for a long time. So I would be working on a routine that you get into, so that way you don't get frozen up over the ball. All right. So Paul W again says, yes, standing up, trying to add speed. Yeah. So if that's the case, because that's a way to get speed, is to stand up. Because if you think about like when you're swinging something, if you're pulling back, that's speeding that up. So a lot of times people, they stand up to add speed to it. It's not as you don't see it as much as the steep club, but if that's what you're seeing, you're going to want to go to our stop early extension section, because that's going to get you kind of staying in your posture more and turning the handle up by the left shoulder going up to speed up the club instead of this. So left shoulder going up to speed up. You're going like this to speed up. You want to get that left shoulder going up to speed up, so you kind of stay in your side bend as you're coming through there. And that's going to be the stop early extension. That's where you're going to be able to work on that. So I definitely check out that. Wayne V says best drill to maintain posture. One of my favorite ones, it's called a shoulder to shoulder drill. And basically what it is you take the club and you put it across your shoulders, and then you just have a towel. I don't have a towel in here, I don't think. But if you have yeah, I do. I have one up here. So if I grab this, let me put this on the floor and you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about here. All right. So if I set this on the floor here, and it would be more like a big golf towel or something like that. And what I like to do is so the ball would essentially be about 2 feet inside of that. So the ball would be like right here. I don't have enough space to show you exactly, but the ball would be somewhere in this area. Now I'm going to take this club, I'm going to put it across my shoulders, and as I turn to the top, the butt end of the club would be pointing down toward the outer portion of the towel. And then as I turn to the bottom here, the other butt end of the club right here would be pointing toward the lower portion of the towel. So that's helping me to stay in my posture. I do some of those going back and forth, getting a good feeling for that. That's a great drill to do. I believe that's on the website still. Use a search engine and search shoulder to shoulder, and that's shoulder TO shoulder, not the number 2, TO shoulder. I think it's something. The title of the video is shoulder drill, hit pure irons or something like that. But it's just that drill right there. That's a great one. But usually, like I said, when people come out of their posture, it's because they're steep in the downswing. That's the number one thing I see, because we're good athletes, we try to stand up to get that to come back down on posture or on plane. So definitely check out the shoulder to shoulder drill. I think that may help you. All right. So Mauricio says, starting the downswing, should the wrists be radially deviated? So when you're talking, so radial deviation is going to be thumbs up, and then ulnar deviation is thumbs down. So when you're starting the downswing, your thumbs are going to be up for sure. Yeah, so definitely radial deviated. We talked about that earlier when we talked about generating lag. We want those wrists to be radially deviated for sure. Yep. All right. And then Michael C says, age and belly hinder weight shift. What can I do? Sometimes this let my arms get too much. So, I mean, sure. I mean, things get a little bit harder when you get older, and the more, necessarily, the more weight you're carrying, the little bit, the weaker basically your legs become and make it harder to control things. So yeah, I mean, it's just going to take a matter. You're going to have to work at it a little bit more to make it work. But that step drill, that is the number one drill for working on weight shift. So Michael, I would recommend going. I work with guys in the distance clinic, and they have, there's various body types that are in there, but most of the guys and people that come to our distance clinics are older, and when you get older, it's easier to put on weight, and so most of the guys that come to our distance clinics are guys that may be a little bit overweight. And we work on the weight shift. You just got to get that step drill going, and it works very, very well. So I definitely take a look at that. How to start the downswing video, search downswing the clay goes over that step drill in there. And any weight shift drill, you're just going to have to work at it a little bit harder. But you look, I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, John Daly, definitely, probably one of the most famous, overweight players ever. And definitely no problems with the weight shift there, but he's a great athlete and he works at it. So that's what you got to do in order to improve that. You just got to work at it. You got to work a little bit harder at it, and it'll make it a lot easier. So Dave S says, I've been working on the straight line release and noticed a huge thing past week. All right, so that's a repost of a previous question. So I'm going to skip that one. Wayne V says, skip question. Please go over swing sequence slowly if possible and what triggers direction change. So I went over that one. Didn't skip it. Greg B says, how do you get the high hands on the backswing? That's a great question. So high hands comes from, a lot of people have trouble with the high hands because they're so used. They have everything in their mind that they need to rotate. Well, that's absolutely true. We do need to rotate, but we also need to lift to get the hands up. So rotating, if I were to not lift my arms at all and I just rotated, well, my swing would be like this. I'm just rotating my hips and my shoulders. So if you look at it from this point of view, I'm not lifting anything. I'm just going like that. That's all. See, I've turned my hips, I've turned my shoulders. But to get the swing to where I want it to be, I have to rotate my arms, right, to get the club to stay on plane, and then I have to lift. And that's now, if I rotate my arms, so that's going like that, and I lift, now I'm in the position. So what that comes from is these muscles right here, the front of your shoulders, your deltoid, I believe they're called, deltoids. So these muscles right here, that's what lifts the club up. So if I were now, let me do the lifting motion without any rotation. So if I were to not rotate anything and I were to just do the lifting motion, it would just be this. The swing would just be this. And if you look at it from this point of view, the swing would just be this right here. That's for a right-handed player. Try not to hit my glass board here. But yeah, the lifting is just this. So you can see here, all I'm doing, there's no rotation here. All I'm doing is lifting. So now if I add the rotation to that, if I just lift the club up here, okay, and then I lag it, right, and I add the rotation, here I am. I'm right in the position that I want to be. So you're going to want to think more to get those high hands that you're lifting up. That's what you're trying to do. Some people, they have it's a physical limitation that they can't lift up. So there's a test that you can do for that. It's called the lat test. So it's testing your flexibility of these lat muscles here. There's also some muscles, I'm not sure what they're called, but they're between your shoulder blades that can, if those are really tight, it can be hard to lift them up. But if you want to test out your lat test at home, let me see if I can move this. So basically you want to get your back up against the wall. So you'd be over here up against the wall. You want to get your flat back, your back flat up against the wall. So try to get your entire spine on the wall. Don't arch your back. Try to get your entire spine on the wall. Put your arms out like this, straight out. You can't bend your arms or anything. Thumbs up, and then try to go as high as you can. So some people can only go like that. Well, if you can only go like that, then you're going to have a hard time getting the club, much higher than this in the swing. So it's got to be lifting up. So if you do have a limitation there, you test that. You remember, you have to keep the moment your back starts arching, because when you arch your back, it makes it easier. So you got to keep your back flat up against there and go as high up as you can. So the one easy way to do that is just to take a club and put it behind your back and push that club up against the wall. So if you have a shaft here, you get up against the wall here, and then you arch your back and then put it, hold it up against there. As soon as that club starts to come out, you can see it's kind of resting on here. But as soon as that club starts to come out, that means that you are arching your back. And at that point, the test is over. You can't go any further than that point. So at that point, if you do have a limitation, you're going to need to, it's a chiropractor, some sort of medical professional. A golf instructor is likely not going to be able to help you with that. So someone like a chiropractor to get you loosened up. I know Josh, who's the founder of our company, with Clay, he had an issue where he couldn't lift his arms up, same kind of thing. And he had an issue. It was what I was talking about. It was between his shoulder blades. It wasn't really his lats. And he went and saw somebody, and then he has to like massage it with a ball, every day to get that loosened up. And now he can swing more vertically. So that could be something that's going on, but you're going to need to feel more lifting of the club. And you may even want to exaggerate and feel like all you're doing is lifting the club as you're rotating to get the hands as high as you can. The worst thing you can do is overdo it. If you get to where you're like this and you just lifted the club way up over your head, and you can't get that club to work down on plane, you're overdoing it at that point. So just find that happy medium that works the best for you. But getting your hands higher can definitely help with speed for sure. All right. So David Y. David Y says, my short game is a mess. I'm topping a lot of shots, often down to the yips. My practice shots feel good, but on the actual shot, I'm very jumpy. How can I tackle this, please? So what I would imagine is most of the time when I see people who have the yips, it's because they have the ball back in their stance too much. And this kind of goes back to it as well. Like all I can tell you is what I see most of the time. I can't tell you specifically what may be happening for you. There's a good chance that what I'm talking about is what's going on with you. But if you want me to know for sure, I do have an unlimited swing review program. I believe I have 4 spots left right now. And I am raising my prices after the Masters weekend. So starting Monday, I'm raising my prices. So now is actually the best time to get in there. $75 a month right now. I'm going to go up to $100 here after the Masters. So if you'd like me to take a look at your swing and know for sure, then I can give you some personalized feedback. But let me go over what I usually see, and you can check this out in your swing. So if I angle this down a little bit, what I usually see, the problem that I see most of the time, if I grab the ball here, is that people put this ball back. Let me angle it down a little bit more. There we go. Because people put this ball back in their stance too much. So they've got it right back here. So what happens is that when you do that, your timing has to be perfect because you're chopping down into the ball. So if you hit a little bit behind the ball, you're just going to chunk it. If you hit a little bit ahead of the ball, you're going to blade it. The only way to hit a good shot is if you hit the ground and the ball at the exact same time. Like you can hit some great shots doing that, but your timing has to be perfect. So a lot of times what happens is you chunk one, you go a few holes, you chunk one, you blade one, you chunk one, you blade one, and you get the yips because you get to the point where, I feel like I'm either going to chunk it or I'm going to blade it. So you get over it and you don't know, and you just end up, getting the yips and you chunk it or blade it anyway. So the thing that you want to do is get this ball more in the middle of your stance so that you can brush the turf as you're going through here. And that way you can hit a little bit behind the ball and it'll still be good. You can hit it a little bit ahead of the ball and it can still be good. So the best advice I would say, one of the best ways to get rid of the yips is to, 1, put that ball more in the middle of your stance. Then 2, go to a practice screen, and hopefully the superintendent isn't looking, and practice shots off of the practice screen and practice sweeping that turf and not taking a divot, just sweeping that turf. That's what you want to get with your chips. And that will allow you to get that consistent contact over and over and over again. But like I said, that's what I see most of the time. That may not necessarily be exactly what you're doing, but I would definitely check that out. And if you want some more personalized feedback that we know is for you, I'd recommend joining my unlimited swing reviews. All right. So Heather S says, I can hit a drive 225, 250, but I feel like my irons and hybrids are not comparable in distance. Is there a reason for this? How can I improve my iron and hybrid distance? So it all comes down to club head speed. I would say my best advice for you would be TrackMan actually publishes, like every few years, they'll publish what the PGA Tour averages are for every club in the bag. So it'll go driver, 3-wood, hybrid, 3-iron, all the way down to pitching wedge. And you can see all the carry distances that they have and all the club head speeds that they have that make that happen. So, for instance, a driver, the average club head speed on tour is 113 miles per hour. I believe that's according, I think the last one they released was 2017. So 113 miles per hour, that accounts for, I think it's 275 carry with the driver on average. And then if you look at an 8-iron, for instance, you're looking at 100 and I think they hit a 8-iron like 155 carry on average. So if you look at that, I mean, it's not going to match your club head speed, because if you're hitting your driver 250 yards, you're probably around 100 miles per hour, I would say, with your driver. Now I'm talking carry. So if you're hitting it, it may be even a little bit less than that. But if you look at their yardages on there, and you should be lower than those yardages. So I wouldn't expect to be able to hit an 8-iron 155 yards like a pro does when they have 113 mile per hour club head speed and you have 100 mile per hour club head speed with your driver. So just something to do as far as just having some reasonable expectations. Now, there could be something that you do with your driver. Some people, because of the ball being up on a tee with a driver and they're hitting up on it, actually release the club a lot better. They release the club more out in front. And also because the ball's more out in front, they release the club more out in front. So they're able to get a little bit more compression with the driver. And then with irons, a lot of times you'll see is that they'll flip at the ball and add loft to the face instead of kind of trusting the loft of the face to try to help the ball up in the air, or to try and add speed, or because they're afraid of hitting the ground. So they shallow the club out late and try to pick the ball off the turf. Those are all things that could be happening. So I would look at where you're releasing the club. Are you releasing, take a look at your swing on camera from face on with the driver. Are you hitting it? Are you releasing that club out front? Where are you releasing that? Draw the angle. And when I say where you're releasing the club, what that means is after impact, or hopefully after impact, the club's coming through and it's all the angles are going to be released. So it's where the club is basically bisecting the arms. So you see right there, that would be a good release, is the club's bisecting the arms. About 45 degrees out in front is where you want to see that. What we usually see with amateur players, because they release the club early, a lot of times that happens just after impact. So it's right in this area right here, and that's only 10, 20 degrees out in front. So I take a look at where you're releasing the club with the driver versus an iron. If you're seeing a big discrepancy there, if you can go and compare your distances as far as club head speed is concerned and distance is concerned to the pros. And if you're seeing a big discrepancy there, so let's say you're hitting your 8-iron 120 yards, if you're hitting drives 250, you should be hitting your 8-iron, 140, 150 yards probably. So, if you're hitting it 120, you're most likely flipping as you're coming through there, adding loft to the face. So you're turning this, your 8-iron or whatever it might be into a more lofted club, like a pitching wedge or a 9-iron, and you're just not going to hit it as far. So I definitely take a look at that, make sure that you're releasing the club more out in front. So that I'd be working on lag, the move, and the straight line release section. Taking a look at those. I'd be happy to help you with that. I do have spots open. At least I think I do, unless you all signed up during the office hours here. But yeah, I would love to help you with that if you want me to take a look. James M says, I'm having trouble with the move and the wrist movement. Can you do the move and the wrist at the same time at the top of the backswing? So basically the move, it's interesting that it's called the move, because it's actually kind of a combination of two moves. So the move is two things. It's shallowing of the club. So when I say shallowing of the club, that's if you're right-handed, from my perspective here, I'm turning the doorknob to the right with both hands. So that's shallowing out the club. So this is steep, this is shallow. So in the downswing, you're here, and then in the downswing, you want that club to shallow out a little bit. So this is an exaggeration, but you want that club to shallow out. What we usually see is the club comes like this, and then a lot of amateurs, the club goes like that. And again, it's an exaggeration, but the club comes steep. And what we want to do is we want to get that shallowing. So that's the first part of it. And then the second part of it is the squaring of the face. So at the first time, if we're looking at the right wrist, shallowing is this motion, right? And then squaring up the face is this motion. It's the right wrist bending back if you're right-handed. If you're left-handed, it's this motion. The left wrist is turning the doorknob to the right this way. And then if you're looking at squaring up the face, if you watch the face here, out here, you watch my wrist, I'm turning that handle down. So the tennis racket drill is a great one to do. I think it's the easiest to do this in the transition. So the transition would be the beginning of the downswing to about halfway down in the downswing. That's a transition phase. So the best time to do that, and I think the easiest, and what you see most pros do, is when they're starting the downswing. That's when that's happening, and that's the tennis racket drill. So you're going to want to go 1.3 of the move, the tennis racket drill. That's going to be the best drill for you to get that feeling. And it just takes, if it's something that you're not comfortable with, it just takes time to get more comfortable with it. So I just try to work on that tennis racket drill 20 minutes a day, and just try to work on that, improve that a little bit every single day. And then over time, those little improvements will add up to a bigger improvement, and you're going to get much better. You're not going to be able to go to the range with the 1.3, the move, most likely anyway, and you're going to work on it for an hour and you're going to nail it. You're going to have it forever. It just doesn't work that way. You're training yourself to do a motor movement that you're trying to accomplish. So if you think about, the downswing, it happens in like a quarter to a third of a second. You don't have time to think about that. So you have to train your body to do it. So think about when you started to learn typing, right? You had to look at every single key on the keyboard and point and peck at all the keys. Well, eventually you got better at that and you started to memorize where all the keys were. So you got a little bit faster at pointing and pecking. And then you learned how to put your fingers on the keyboard the right way and learned that every finger had a job for a specific letter. And after some time, because you memorized all that, you got better and better. But initially you're looking at the keyboard and you had to think about each individual one and how that finger moved to make that happen. And then eventually you got faster and faster. And eventually you were able to not look at the keyboard at all and just look at the screen and watch the words that you were typing. And then eventually you're not even thinking about each individual letter. You're only thinking about the word that you're trying to type. And maybe even at that point, you're just thinking about sentences. Well, that's what it takes to improve a motor movement. You have to keep doing it. And of course you're going to mess up. You're going to type, a W instead of an E, or an N instead of a B. You're going to do that sort of thing. But the more that you do it, the faster you get at it. So it's the same thing about trying to change a motor movement in the golf swing. If you're used to doing this, you're going to have to change the way that you do things. And you're going to make mistakes at first, but the more that you do it and the more that you train it, the better you're going to get at it. So just understand that, changing these kinds of things take time. You can never get rid of a habit. You can only form a new habit that overcomes that one. So that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to train yourself to do that. All right. So Kyle P says, my club often gets off plane in the downswing. It tends to get stuck too far inside after I try to flatten it out with the move. Leads to a lot of inconsistencies. Any help is appreciated. So it sounds like you're getting a little bit stuck. So you're flattening this out. The body's getting out in front, and then everything's kind of getting stuck behind you. So I would just try to feel like you're shallowing out, and the hands are kind of staying more in front of your body. So one nice thing to think about is this right elbow. It's trying to get that right elbow going in toward your belt buckle. Because what's happening when you get stuck is usually that right elbow kind of gets back behind your body. So we want to feel like that right elbow is coming in more to your belt buckle, and that's going to get the arms and everything more out in front. So I just do some drills where you go up to the top, and then I would slowly come halfway down, and I would feel that right elbow coming in toward my belt buckle. And then from there, I just swing all the way through, do a bunch of reps where you're pausing there, and then do some slow fluid practice swing reps, really, really slow and fluid, no pauses or anything, where you're getting that same thing. You're doing that same thing, and then try to add the golf ball and do it. All right. So Bruce H says, transitioning from my driver to my irons is difficult for me. What makes the big difference? Is it swing plane or something else because of different shaft lengths? So one thing is the biggest difference between an iron swing and a driver swing. Well, there's really two big differences. One, with a driver swing, it's more aggressive. It's usually a harder swing, at least for me, because with a driver, I'm not going for distance control. I'm trying to get as much distance as I can. If it goes 20 yards further than I normally hit it, then that's awesome. Whereas with an iron, right, if you hit an iron 20 yards further than you intended to, well, you're going to airmail the green, right? It's not as target oriented. So I'm taking a more aggressive and harder swing. And then the other big piece of it is the way that the club is coming into the golf ball. So if I have my driver here, with a driver, because it's more conducive for distance, I'm trying to hit up on the ball. And that's to higher the launch and lower the spin, because that's going to give me the most distance. And I'm able to do that because the ball is sitting up on a tee. I can hit up on it. There's no turf in the way because it's up off the turf. I can hit up on it. So that's really the biggest difference there. And then with an iron, something that I'm hitting off of the turf, any ball that I'm hitting off of turf, well, I can't hit up on that golf ball now. If I have it sitting on the turf like this, I can't hit up on it because now that turf's in the way. I have to hit down on that turf. So that's why people maybe have the toughest time transitioning to that, is because it's you're hitting up on the ball versus hitting down on the ball. And that's easily adjustable with where you're putting the ball in your stance. So with the iron, I like to have that ball basically straight down from the left ear. It's going to be a little bit ahead of middle of your stance. So that's the lead ear. Sorry for left-handed folks, but it's going to be the lead ear. It's going to be just a little bit ahead of the middle of your stance. And that's with most clubs. It can be maybe a ball back with a wedge, or a ball forward with long irons and hybrids and fairway woods. But anywhere in that vicinity is good. With a driver, you want that pretty much on that lead shoulder is where, right on the shoulder socket, that's pretty much straight down from there is where you want that. And that's going to allow you to get that upward angle of attack. So what I do to help you start transitioning from that is I would just go to the range and practice hitting switching clubs. So go to the range and hit a driver, and then the next club hit a wedge, and then hit a driver again, and then hit an 8 iron. Keep switching it up to help you get more comfortable with switching back and forth, because that's what's really happening on the golf course, right? When you go to the range, the best way to practice typically is to switch clubs and hit different kinds of shots throughout your range session. A lot of people, they have trouble transitioning from the range to the golf course because they're in the golf course, they're in a groove, on the range, sorry, they're in a groove. They're hitting the same shot over and over and over at the same target. And, it's easy to get in a groove when you do that. But on the golf course, that doesn't happen. You're hitting a different club almost every single time. And there's time between shots. You're hitting a different kind of shot. Sometimes you want to hit a fade or a draw. There's different targets. So to improve the way that you play on the course, sometimes it's good to just try to play on the range just like you would on the course. So switching clubs every single time is a good way to do that. So I'd recommend to do that to help you with that. Mary Carmen C here says, I know the transition of the lag. I can do it in slow motion, but I cannot do it in normal speed. Do you have any drills or ideas that can help, please? So it's just like what I was talking about a minute ago, the typing analogy. So when you're trying to develop a new motor movement, and you just have to go as slow as you have to go to make it work. And then every time that you work on it, you've got to try to improve and just improve upon that. So if you're able to get it in a slow fluid practice swing really, really slow, let's say you're able to get it at 50% speed. Well, the next time that you work on it, your goal should be just to go faster than 50% speed. And if you just work on this for 20 minutes a day over the course of a couple of weeks, and you improve upon it every single day that you go out there, well, eventually those small improvements are going to lead to a big improvement. And every little bit helps, especially when you're generating lag. When you're talking about, the difference between, a 90-degree angle here and a 70-degree angle, it may not seem like much of the club head, but that little extra bit that the club head has to accelerate can add club head speed and improve your sequencing and help you hit the ball a lot better. So the best advice I can give you is to just try to improve every time you work on it, but understand that if you just go out to the range and work on it for an hour, you're not likely going to go from casting the club to generating lag like that. It takes time and repetition and getting more and more comfortable with it as you keep on working on it to improve that. So that's my best advice to people is just understand. That's why we say so many reps. You probably noticed on the website, we say do 1,000 reps or do 3,000 reps. Well, we're not telling you to go out to the range and do 1,000 reps right now. That's crazy. You'd be out there all day and you'd be really, really tired. What we're saying is over 1,000 reps, do 100 a day for a couple weeks, and you're going to start to see better results. And for some people, it takes more reps and less reps than others. Everybody's a little bit different. It just depends on how comfortable you are with the movement already. For some people, it might take 10 reps. For some people, for some reason, they started casting the club, and maybe they used to lag the club, and they just started casting it for some reason. And then they just need to be reminded, oh, this is better to lag the club. And it's just like flipping on a light switch. For some people, it's like that. It's fairly rare, but for some people, it's like that. But for some people, they've done this their whole entire life. They casted the club forever. So at that point, it's going to take some time and some getting used to because it's so far off from what they used to do. So for those people, it could take 1,000 reps. It could take 10,000 reps to get really, really good at it. So my best advice is just stick with it. Try to get a little bit better every time that you work on it, and keep working hard on it and be really, really focused on it. And that's what's really going to help you the most. All right. So Nicholas M says, should my club face be toe up or slightly closed at the end of my takeaway? It doesn't really matter, to be honest. The only thing that really matters is that impact. So you can bring the club up with the face like that. You can bring the club up with the toe up, with it open a little bit. The only thing that matters is getting that ball down to impact. So the only thing I would say is if you find that doing this versus this helps you get a better impact position, then do that. That's a good thing to do. But that doesn't mean that for you, it doesn't. I've just found it doesn't really matter that much. So most of the time, people get that club in the same position at the top, whether they do this or this. So it's just about getting that club in the right impact position. Everything you do with your technique, takeaway, shoulder turn, all of the things, lag, it has to be to improve what's happening at impact. So when we're talking about shoulder turn and lag, that's going to help you at impact because that's going to add speed. If we're talking this or that, what does that help you at this and that at this point in the swing and the takeaway? How does that help you at impact? That's what you have to ask yourself. And if you hit balls better doing one or the other, then that's what's right for you. But that's why it's not a part of the Top Speed Golf system. If you look at pro swings, look at a ton of them, you're going to see all kinds of different things. You're going to see the club like this sometimes. You're going to see it in all kinds of, you're going to see it way inside. You'll see some guys that bring it up way outside, some guys that bring it up on plane. You're going to see all kinds of things. And obviously, they all hit the ball well. But what you're going to see is from here down to impact, most of them are going to be very, very identical. So what you do in the takeaway, if it helps you get into a better impact position, then do that thing. But I wouldn't waste a ton of time trying to get the perfect, toe up position because that may not do anything to improve your impact. And I would rather you spend your time on things that are actually going to improve your golf game. So, go out there, go out to the range and try different pieces of the takeaway that or different parts, different rotations of the hands, and see what gives you the best results. And then just stick with that. But really, the universal truths of the golf swing are the Top Speed Golf System. So I would recommend really just spending your time on those pieces. And then if you're nailing all those pieces, then I would look at, okay, can I tweak this a little bit in my backswing, and will that help my impact? And then start working on that stuff. But the Top Speed Golf System is definitely where you're going to want to spend most of your time. All right, let me get a drink here. James C says, I just bought a PXG irons. I got them at half price because I'm a veteran and I was using pings before. Okay. They give you a discount just because you used pings before? That's funny. I seem to be chunking a lot of shots at the range. I fall into a pattern of hitting with repetitive shots on the course. It's a different story. Okay, so I seem to be chunking a lot of shots at the range, but I fell into the pattern of hitting the repetitive shots on the course. It's a different story. So it's kind of like what I was talking about earlier is practicing how you do on the range very similarly to what you do on the course. So on the range, it's easy to get in the groove. We're hitting the same shot over and over and over. Switch it up. What I like to do is actually good way to end like a range session, like your last 30 balls or so, is to have a golf course that you know really well in your mind, or maybe you're preparing to hit a golf course or to play a golf course or something like that. Have a good picture of that course in your mind and play the course on the range. So if the first hole is a par 4, 400-yard par 4, it's a driver hole, maybe a dog legs to the left or something like that. Well, I'm visualizing that hole in front of me, and I'm going through my pre-shot routine and everything. And I have my driver, so I'm going to go up, I'm going to hit my drive, and I'm going to watch and see where it goes. I'm going to play the course in my mind. So if I hit a good one out there, let's say it's a 300-yard drive right down the middle. Well, now the next shot I know is going to be around 100 yards. So I'm going to grab my wedge, and I'm going to hit a wedge shot at a target. The good part is that, with this kind of drill, you're not putting, so you make all the putts. You imagine that you make all the putts, so you shoot like course records when you do this. So it's pretty fun exercise to do, but it really helps you get in the mindset of switching shots, because you got to switch up and vary what you're doing out on the range to match what you're doing on the course if you want to see a similar type performance. All right, so hopefully that helps, James. So Nicholas M, we're about nearing our end of our time here. I'll answer this last question. And hopefully, if you didn't get your questions answered, I apologize. I try to answer as many questions as I can in an hour. I wish I could sit here and help you all out all day and answer your questions, but I got students to swing reviews and a lot of questions to answer through there as well. So I'll answer this last one here by Nicholas M. Where should my ball position be with my irons? So it's like I mentioned earlier, the best way, I think, and it can be a little bit different for everybody. This isn't one of those universal truths, but what I like to do is about straight down from your lead ear. So straight down from the lead ear. You can't really see the ball. There we go. So straight down from the lead ear or the logo on my shirt here. That's basically, to get the right camera angle here. There you go. So that's basically what I'm looking at right here. So that's a little bit ahead of the middle of my stance. That's going to be a good spot for pretty much any club off the turf. Now, for me with my wedges, I like to keep it simple. So I like to play it there for about any shot that's off the turf. And then for wedges, I like to just put it more in the middle of my stance. So maybe a ball back, it'd be up here or back here a little bit. And then if it's a long iron, like a 3 or 4, maybe a 5 iron, hybrid, 3 wood, 5 wood, any of those. So if that's my normal position straight down from my lead ear or my shirt logo, I maybe put a ball ahead of that. And that just helps me because you're coming in a little bit more shallow. It helps you get the ball in the air a little bit better. So that's what I like to do, but I like to keep it simple. Ben Hogan, he incrementally changed it. He actually changed the openness of his stance and the closeness of his stance along with the ball position. To me, that just complicates it a little bit too much. Ben Hogan practiced, I think somebody made a comment I wasn't sure if it's true, but it wouldn't surprise me that said that Ben Hogan practiced 8 hours a day. Well, I think a lot of pros practice about 8 hours a day. But I mean, if you're practicing that much and hitting that many shots, it's pretty easy for you to know exactly where the ball position is with an 8-iron from every single club. But if you're a guy that's, like me, I'm playing a couple times a week at most typically, and I don't practice as much as I like to. I can't practice 8 hours a day. I'm lucky if I get an hour or so of practice in a week. So for me, it's just to keep it simple. It's just easy just to think about it in that same position, ball back maybe for a wedge, and a ball forward maybe for longer clubs. That's the easiest thing for me, and that's what I recommend for most people. But again, you may find that you hit your wedges better from that initial ball position, and you might find that you hit the long irons better if you have them a little bit further up in the stance. So it's all about tinkering what works best for you, but that's a good starting point, what I gave you there. So everybody, thanks a ton for joining me. I'll be back here tomorrow. Tomorrow is Friday, so it'll be 9 a.m. I'll be back here to answer your questions again. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks.